I can tell you just a little bit about, I think, a very fine model for that. That's a great question. In First Lutheran Norfolk, there were 3 of us. And the other 2, I was the senior pastor, the other 2 had what are called coterminous calls. So that they knew that when they came. When I left, they knew they had to leave. And so, one by one, they left. Jane Nicholson, who was the last to leave, only left about a week before the new senior pastor came. Obviously, they weren't going to be kicked out on the street, but the idea was the new senior pastor needed to form a pastoral staff that fit her or his ministry style. We have very different ministry styles. Very different. We have very different worship styles. You know, your worship style is very much in tune with what I was shaped with and what I love to work in. It's not for lots of people. It's your central gathering time. So I would caution the call committee, be very careful that you try to get somebody who's genetically connected with what you value. That's the most, it's when most of us are together, and it is critical. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people come in and just tromp all over what is at the core, what are the core values of a congregational's worship style. It's key. It's very key. And a second is like, I didn't mean to get in all this, but a second is likened to it. You really want somebody who will work. No, we're not saved by our works. But I don't think in a congregation like this, and I know all 3 of your previous pastors, and none of them were lazy. Especially, I was in seminary with Doug. We were in seminary choir together. We have followed each other's ministries over the years. It was my privilege a couple years ago to get his personalized tour of this place after this was built. And I think he so enjoyed watching me salivate all over it as only he could. And you know, I just, you need somebody who's going to appreciate this. Not that you want somebody just like him. Now, that may sound strange to some people, but we all have different gifts. I told First Lutheran leaders, you know, don't go out and look for somebody like me. God forbid. I gave you what I had. Now you need some different gifts for a while. It's like pistons in an engine. You know, this one's up and that one's down and in between. And the engine doesn't work if they're all up at one time or all down at one time. So that's part of what you do in the profile. And your call committee is the key. I mean, they're the fulcrum when it comes to putting that with the actual candidates that will be interviewed. It's important that you not fly in the face of what the core values are, but there are many, many ways to live those out. So I would just say, you know, and I told them, I said, find somebody who can do the things that you didn't think, you know, you would like me to have done. One person can't do everything. I mean, one person can't have all the gifts. That's what I mean by that. And so you will want to find a senior pastor, and then whatever other staffing. That there'll need to be an analysis of the staffing that you have. I mean, I don't think I'll figure it out during the time that I'm here. I wander through this building and I meet people who are doing all sorts of things. And it's an interesting, it's the first time I've ever been in a congregation that had a school. And of course that's a uniqueness of this congregation, and it's a blessing to those. I've had 1 week of chapels, and it's very touching what goes on in there. And to help shape young Christians. So, but we unabashedly do what is our gift to offer. People can take it or leave it, but we're going to still offer the gift. So, you know, how you utilize all these resources, I mean, it's so rich. You dare not waste them. So, you know, you need a senior pastor who's going to be able to understand systems and be able to, you know, help people offer their gifts, whether they're paid or not. And so you're not going out after two pastors at once. That just, and you'll also need to look at your finances and see what's the best use of the gifts that God gives us. Next week, we're going to start 4 Sundays that will ask people to look at how God has blessed them and to respond. Not to respond to a budget, but to respond out of what you have been given. And then leadership will sort of help decide what to recommend for approval by the congregation. And a lot of that will then determine what can be done in the next period. You know, you may have that senior pastor, and then it may be a while before you do something else. You've got a lot of gifts around here. So, and I would say, too, about that, don't rush. If the right person shows up next week, go for it. I'm sort of missed already the people. But I'll get over it. No. You know, this is going to be another wonderful memory as long as my mind works. This time that we have together, I could just put it like that was last time. And just to see the fun that people have. And to note that just even in the people I've met so far, very dedicated leadership. But take your time. I told a number of people already, you'll get tired of my same old languages. But my father always told me before I was married, and sometimes I've been frustrated when things wouldn't work. And he said, son, it's a lot better to want something you don't have than to have something you don't want. And that goes for just about anything. It certainly goes for pastors. So even if it passes 5 months, God will do something for you. And don't see that as, you know, the closer we get, the more anxious people get. You know, I'll be around during that time, and if we'll do the best. I may think of some. I am not to be involved in actually the analytical part of the call process. That's not an interim's job. An interim can see that the process is working correctly, but not the core of it. If I think of someone who might be a good candidate, I will tell the bishop. And Bishop Monty always asks for that kind of thing. Any of you could likewise make those suggestions to his office through Jean or through me. But that's where they go. And see, that's another thing that's important about the kind of church we have. I've seen congregations go out and think they're going to just do it without the bishop's office. A heap of trouble because there are things that bishops know that aren't known elsewhere. And so what happens when, if it were a person in Virginia, Bishop Monty would likely know, would know the person. But if it were a person in Minnesota, Bishop Monty would call the bishop there and get clearance. And that's where the bishop conversation can take place, and nobody else knows what's shared in that conversation. So it's a protection as well for you. It's a benefit of our kind of system. Bishop's office is to protect a congregation from predators. Just like Jesus protecting sheep from lions or wolves, or any good shepherd. That is much more than you asked for.